Hi, my name is Felix Matos Rodríguez, and I am the Chancellor of the City University of New York. People who know me call me Felo, and this is my conversation space on CUNY TV, Café con Felo. Bienvenidos a Café con Felo. It's hard to believe, but this year marks the 25th anniversary of the attacks on the World Trade Center, which changed America and CUNY forever. Many of those lost, including dozens of heroic first responders, were members of the CUNY community. We also felt the impact directly at Borough of Manhattan Community College, where Fitterman Hall, just blocks away from the towers, was badly damaged and had to be torn down and rebuilt. That is why I am so honored to have on my show Beth Hillman, who has been the president and CEO of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum since 2022. Welcome, Beth, and thank you for being here in the show. Since the memorial opened in 2014, over 97 million from all over the world have visited the memorial, and 28 million have visited the museum. And yet, there are millions of youth in America, including likely many CUNY students, who do not remember the terror attacks. In an effort to change that, over the past 4 years, Ms. Hillman has focused her work on expanding audiences and helping the younger generation who were not born when 9/11 happened to better understand this tragic day and what it means to New York City, to our country, and to the world. Before coming to lead the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, Dr. Hillman served as the president of Mills College in Oakland, the first women's college west of the Rockies back when it was founded. And her academic career includes stints as provost, academic dean, and professor at the University of California Hastings College of Law, now called UC Law San Francisco. And she was also a professor at Rutgers Law School. I won't go on because her impressive career also includes 7 years of service in the U.S. Air Force, as well as working for the Department of Defense and the National Institute of Military Justice. So thank you for your service. Once again, Beth, welcome to Café con Felo. And the first question that I ask every guest is a coffee show. Do you drink coffee? And if you do, how do you take it?
It's great to be here. And yes, I do drink coffee, and I take it with milk.
With milk, okay. Just 1 cup early in the morning, or are you recurrent?
Recurring cups in the morning, but I do have to stop at some point so I can get some sleep at night. That's changed in recent years. So.
I have the same. Well, again, I think it'd be great to give the audience a little bit of a sense of your trajectory. I mean, you do have this incredible, diverse career, time in the Air Force, degrees in engineering, history, law, and history again, things in academia and the armed forces. Can you tell us a little bit about young Beth and some of the choices that she made, and a little bit about what you think is a unifying theme in your trajectory to get to the 9/11 Museum?
You know, I've found that just about everything that I've studied has been useful in this current job, which is a tremendous privilege, and I'm thrilled to be back in New York. Young Beth, well, I'm a twin, and that was very important to my arc through life. My sister is much nicer and smarter than I am, and I actually followed her into academics. She was a professor before I was. Okay. And I chose engineering because I wanted to go to a pricey institution, and I wanted to find a way to pay for it. The Air Force gave a lot of scholarships in electrical engineering at the time. I wasn't a great engineer, and I didn't maybe love it like others did, but I didn't want to not finish. I decided I wanted to finish that, and I realized it's one of those labels, those proxies for merit that allow people you translate to people as competent and capable sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was good to have a degree in engineering, but my second major was in history, and I did really love history, and it came much more easily to me. And then in the Air Force, I opted to go into space operations. Again, I didn't quite know what I was getting into when I did that, like most of the things that I've done, but it was a great opportunity to learn a tremendous amount, and I ended up then going back to school to teach at the Air Force Academy, and I studied history because I had loved history as an undergraduate, and And I was grateful for that opportunity. And the Air Force taught me a tremendous amount. It's like New York. You know, you meet people from all over the world and all over the country when you serve in the armed forces. And then when I was leaving the Air Force, I wasn't sure quite what to do next, and so I thought I'd spend a little more time in school, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be a history professor, so I studied law too. And I have to say, all those backgrounds have been helpful to me in this current position, because the structure and the World Trade Center site itself, very complex. And I'm fascinated by it, and it's important that we care for it properly, that it's a sacred space that remains that way long into the future. The history of 9/11 is about the most compelling history, so that's been helpful. And any institutional leader, it helps to understand a little law, I think, so that you maybe can keep yourself out of trouble.
Comes in handy, yes, yes. I do want to get to 9/11 Museum, and particularly with the anniversary coming up and some of the exciting things that you're doing on the educational realm, but couldn't resist about your time at Mills. I mean, such an incredibly iconic institution. And so, I mean, give us a little bit of a sense of your time there. What are some of the proud accomplishments and maybe some connections between that and your work now?
Well, I think anytime you're working in education, which I still am now, you're trying to connect to different kinds of people. And Mills had an extraordinary history and collection of people who were there. We were serving mostly Pell-eligible students, mostly students of color. Our undergraduates were all women. Our graduate students were of all genders. And we were struggling to find ways to make that economically viable moving ahead, like many small colleges. Yep. We had, sometimes I felt like we had more acres than students. We had an aging physical plant, and we had an incredibly dedicated and accomplished group of alumni who really cared about the future of the institution, yet couldn't necessarily agree on what the right route was into the future. And Mills famously had tried to go co-ed in 1989, 1990, and it had not worked. And the campus went on strike, the students took over, the board of trustees turned over, the president turned over, and the institution remained for women only at the undergraduate level. And that fierce pride that Mills students and graduates had in the institution, it was hard to navigate some of the changes that we had to make as things went ahead. But I learned a tremendous amount from the alumni, from the students, from the faculty, and from the community. Oakland is a vibrant, amazing city that was right around Mills. And the process of merging into a larger institution and having different merger partners was also a learning experience for me.
So let me then fast forward to this incredible opportunity to come and lead one of New York City's and probably the country's most iconic museums. And so is that something that you were looking for in terms of where you were in your career and you said, oh, that's available, that's something where I really could see myself? Or was it the kind of opportunity that sort of kind of found you as you were doing other things?
It would be B. It was an opportunity that found me, and I had not really thought that my military service and the work I was doing in military justice at the time and my connection to veterans, I hadn't really thought that would be, because there were certainly veterans from Mills College, but it was historically a women's college, a very different group of primary stakeholders. But I was thrilled when the opportunity came up, because as a parent and a veteran, as somebody who lived through 9/11, I had just left New York and moved to Philadelphia to teach at Rutgers. Like so many people, I saw it on TV. My sister was still teaching here at Manhattan College in New York at the time. I certainly knew people who were directly affected, but I wasn't directly affected. In the way that so many were. But I did wonder, should I rejoin the Air Force? What should I do? So it had this profound effect on the world that I continued to live in, but also on my own family and my own sense of what the right thing next was to do. And I saw how we came together and came apart in the months and years after 9/11, and I found that fascinating to seek to understand it. And I also found the community here. Our chairman, Mike Bloomberg, who was the mayor, took over in 2006 as the chairman, is still the chairman of the 9/11 Memorial Museum. I realized it was an institution that didn't have to be. It wasn't wasn't, preordained. It had to be worked through the grief and the loss and the challenge and the disagreements. I mean, it was all of New York that was invested in what would happen in Lower Manhattan afterwards. And what we did at the memorial made a tremendous difference in the success of the revival of the World Trade Center and Lower Manhattan. So to be able to learn about that and be a part of sustaining that into the future, it was a really exciting opportunity.
And you sort of picked the right word, because the sustaining part is, I think, the part that probably for many in the audience would be surprising, right? Because I think anybody would assume that given the importance of that moment to the country and to New York, that this institution would be evidently self-sustaining, and there would always be interest in it, and there was always, right, that there's the relevancy would never really be a question here, right? And not that it is a question, but I do think that in your role you've had to sort of think about how do we tell the stories to generations that might not have. I was also in the city when that happened. My wife was pregnant 7 months with our first son, right? So, and clearly CUNY, John Jay lost, 60 some alumni who were first responders and all of that. So that connection is but for the next generations, I think that is probably one of the main things that was entrusted upon you in thinking about the future of the museum.
No, it's true. Institutions don't sustain themselves, no matter how important their mission seems to be at a moment or how profound the impact was that they're describing to the world. The Memorial and Museum, once it was built, immediately became very appealing to people who wanted to try to understand. We didn't know if that would happen when it first opened. It's a heavy set of stories. Now, 25 years later, we can add another set of stories that are about the healing, the rebuilding, the service that was inspired by 9/11. That wasn't available at first. It was more trying to find the narratives that would speak to the people who had experienced it themselves in so many different ways and allow them to remember, to learn more, and to feel a sense of, at the memorial itself, the reverence, the solemnity that needs to come with being a place where so many lives were lost to those terrible attacks. So the new generation piece of it is important. I also think the ways in which we're learning today are changing. They always are changing, but they're changing pretty fast right now. We need to make sure that we keep up with that and that we get more people engaged over time with being ambassadors for us and helping to tell those stories. We have teachers who weren't alive on 9/11. Yeah. And when we say never forget, you can never forget things that you had to learn, that you didn't actually witness yourself or experience. So it's a combination of making sure that we remember, but we teach at the same time that we're undertaking that.
Well, and some of the themes connected to the attack, intolerance, hatred, unfortunately, those themes continue to sort of show their ugly face in the world and in New York. So in that sense, some of the lessons learned through the presentation at the museum is painfully very relevant today.
And it sounds like you've been to the museum, and and I'm grateful for your willingness to come and to bring other people there, and for all those in the CUNY community who have been to the museum. Not everybody has been. We'd love for them to come. But for us, our mission is to commemorate what happened on 9/11, all those people who were killed, remember their lives, to educate the world about what happened then, how we got there, and what has happened since, and then what you just referenced, inspire an end to the hatred and intolerance that caused it.
And then also, because the other side of the museum is also then the incredible stories of resilience, right? Individually and then collectively in rebuilding that. I think that if there's one museum, right, and I shouldn't be saying this, right, and maybe I should say the Louis Armstrong Museum, which belongs to Queens College, right?
Which I've been to and I love.
That too.
Very impressive.
Those are two museums that every New Yorker should absolutely visit. So, because there's that story also comes very, very strongly in the exhibitions and the material that you have at the museum.
9/11 affected people from all walks of life. People from more than 90 countries were killed. And it's indiscriminate violence. That's, terrorism, acts of violence that it's happenstance who lived and died that day. The grief and the loss that comes from that is very difficult to recover from. But the commitment to rebuild and the tenacity and the sacrifice that people were willing to bear to support the families in the aftermath of 9/11, to support the workers who were on the site, the rescue, recovery, and relief operation, an incredible effort. that many who have participated in it have said only New York could have done that as quickly, as safely, as appropriately, taking care of all the people who were angry and frustrated and sad and scared during that entire time. It was a remarkable testament to that. And the museum itself has artifacts that exemplify that too. The slurry wall, the last column, pieces of steel, pieces of the retaining wall that had to stand so that Manhattan didn't flood. I mean, it's a remarkable set of problems that were solved by the New Yorkers, the Americans, and the people from around the world that came to help.
And the things that keep being added to the collection too, right? People might not be aware that you continue to get items that allow you to match DNA, and there's an ongoing also research activity at the museum that people might not be aware of.
So that forensic identification program is the office of the chief medical examiner of the city, and that is located at our site but not in the museum, but they do continue to identify with new forensic techniques because so many families, 1,100 families, didn't get remains identified. So that the medical examiner made a commitment to continue to try to identify every person who was killed on 9/11. Another story that we can tell that's a difficult one, but also has hope embedded in it, is the story of the health effects after 9/11.
Absolutely.
Many more people have died. More than 450 firefighters now have died from 9/11 related health effects. And that terrible loss on 9/11, 343 firefighters, now exceeded by the number who were killed. The NYPD, many, many times more police officers have died from 9/11 related health effects because of that dust that had so many carcinogens in it. Lead, asbestos, pulverized glass. That's a story that we still collect about, that we keep trying to understand better. And we support the outreach of the World Trade Center Health Program and the Victims' Compensation Fund, which help the people to get care, to get support, to get compensation if they're suffering from an illness or an injury that was caused by their service at 9/11 after the attacks, or by their proximity to the site.
All exciting things, but surprise, surprise, we've come to the end of the first segment, so we need to take a very short break, but when we come back, we'll get some great questions from students at the Museum Studies program of the School of Professional Studies. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Café con Felo. We're here today with Dr. Beth Hillman, President and CEO of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Before we go to two questions from our students, celebrating the 25th anniversary, I know that you have a number of exciting new projects associated with the anniversary. Do you want to give us a little bit of a sense of what's coming?
I'd love to. We're grateful for this opportunity to mark such a big milestone by adding to the ceremony, the commemoration ceremony on 9/11, a seventh moment of silence. So we have 6 moments of silence. Family members read the names. The elected officials who join us don't have any speaking role on 9/11. It's the family members who read the names of the people killed that day. At the times that the planes hit the towers, at the time that the towers fell, at the time that the plane hit the Pentagon, and then Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Those are 6 moments of silence where the firefighter rings a bell, and we mark that in the course of the reading of names. For the first time this year, we're adding a 7th moment of silence to recognize the people who have died from 9/11 related illnesses and injuries caused after 9/11 because of their service at our site or the proximity to the site afterwards. It's an important moment to welcome them into the commemoration that day.
And they're clearly part of the story. And you also have an incredible matching gift from former Mayor Bloomberg, right? Which is helping in the fundraising efforts, right?
We do. We're running a capital campaign. That campaign is raising money to sustain the museum long into the future. And Mayor Bloomberg, our chairman, Mike Bloomberg, has made a $25 million challenge to help us reach the $75 million mark in our fundraising campaign. He's been with us from the start. He became mayor right after 9/11, and his leadership has made a tremendous difference for us. Because of that campaign and because of other generous donors to the museum, we're also able to open this year a special exhibition, and that will open to the public on September 12th. It's called In Their Honor, Stories of Service Inspired by 9/11. And that will tell some of the stories of people who came to the site and helped, but also people who founded nonprofits, who followed in the footsteps of their parents who served, who joined the armed forces.
Beautiful, beautiful story. So thank you. And yep, get a sip there. So let's turn now to questions from CUNY students at our Museum Studies program at the School of Professional Studies. I believe the first question comes from Jill.
As a museum studies major who focuses on memory, how do you balance the individual and the collective memory of 9/11 at the museum?
Oh.
Jill has hit on a fundamental tension of the museum and also of memory and history that we experience it both individually and collectively. The museum is at the site. It's an archaeological site, really. It's at the site of the attacks, and it also tells so many different stories. I think that the way we try to balance that very tension that Jill describes between an individual and a collective memory is through two principles that drove the people who built the museum. That it has to be engaging so that people can encounter it wherever they are, whether they have a lived memory of the experience or whether they're learning it for the first time. And the other piece is to be authentic. It's so important, the trust that people put in museums to tell the stories of whatever the content is, but for us, the stories of 9/11 fairly, accurately, completely, in an inclusive way. That makes it, that's a part of how we balance that individual and the collective piece.
Excellent. I think we have a second question from Lena.
Recognizing the diversity of the communities and families affected by 9/11, how do you navigate representation and inclusivity?
The 9/11 terrorist attacks were by definition inclusive and in really the most awful of ways. Indiscriminate violence killed people from more than 90 countries, people from all walks of life, financiers and workers at Windows on the World, the people on the airplanes, the crews on the aircraft, the people who were working at the Pentagon that day. So the inclusivity is just an essential part of what happened on 9/11. And we can't tell that story without telling all those different stories. It's also, for us, a part of the stories since 9/11 that we can tell now, 25 years later. Because the stories of service after 9/11 in our new special exhibition, we didn't know what those would look like when we were first building the exhibitions of the museum, but now we can add that content to the museum, and we can do it in an inclusive way, where we really tell all the stories of the different people, for instance, who came to help. Theater workers brought lights down to the site so that they could see to work during that time. Iron workers, demolition workers, transit workers who got everybody out of the subways. No one was killed on the subways that day. The MTA, the Transit Workers Union, Local 100, so many of the folks, Con Ed, the folks who came to the site who restored power and kept people safe in that aftermath. Really an incredible range of folks who were inspired to work in mental health because they recognized the long-term challenges of the trauma that people experienced that day. So just a tremendous array of people with different backgrounds and different interests who came together. And it's really that unity. People doubt today sometimes whether we can come together across the lines that divide us. I find that the 25th anniversary of 9/11 has come at a time that couldn't be a better time to remind everybody that really, no, you can see your neighbors. We do have a shared humanity, and it's possible for people to come together, notwithstanding what on 9/11 was just a loss that no one could fathom before it happened.
And it's not theoretical. It did occur, right? We can go back to it, and as historians, we hope that people take those things and use them to
Absolutely.
things in the present. I love to get a sense now of you come to become the director of the museum, right? And I'm sure that you did all the prepping that one does when you're doing the interviews and doing all that work, right? To be to give it your best shot, right? And to do that. And probably familiarity with some of the themes and things there. You become director. Is there a thing or two that were total surprises in the role that you were like, oh, nobody prepared me for this, or I didn't know that we were engaged in this line of work, and oh my God, how fascinating! Anything in that realm?
I didn't realize how complex the physical plant of the museum was. The 500,000-gallon waterfalls that are above the main exhibition spaces of the museum right there. And I found that incredibly compelling. The designers, the architects who came up with that very compelling way to remember the people who were lost, reflecting absence, you know, the pools where the water drops to a point you can't see it. But maintaining that is very difficult. The Memorial Plaza is the roof of the museum. And I'm also fascinated by just how brilliant our engineers have been in finding ways, creative ways, to solve any problems that come up and keep it as pristine and respectful and functional because so many people come to the museum every day. And then, I don't know, on the education side, I wasn't sure what the first responder community would be like in terms of its interest in education. And wow, I've been so moved by it. I had been in the Air Force. I had worked in purple service environments where we talk about different branches of service working together. But the firefighters, the police officers, the national intelligence agencies, the FBI agents and analysts, really interested in learning and working together to overcome the problems that they had. That's not something that I had expected to experience.
And you think that is 9/11 is a special glue that sort of makes that happen?
I think that an effort to create a culture and a community around a shared challenge, to use a mild word for the depth of what 9/11 had everyone face. I think that brought people together then and brings them together now. And I think that the holders of the cultures of those agencies very much want to share that with the next generation, just like we want to share all the stories of 9/11 with the next generation. So they're ready to face the challenges that we don't anticipate they'll see down the road.
To all the audience there, if you have not visited the museum, you're really missing one of the really unique spaces in New York. Even your website is also amazing, right? I mean, I don't want people just to go to the website and not visit, but incredible content too in that website and a lot of educational programming, and we're part of that. So very, very proud to be with you.
CUNY has been an excellent partner to us. All your educators out there make a tremendous difference for us. We're grateful for that chance to work together.
And more to be done. So, but unfortunately, we have to end. Hopefully, we maybe can bring you back at the end of all the things that you're doing, right, to do a report on that and on a successful campaign too. So good luck. So and thank you for sharing your personal story with us today, and also all the things that you're doing at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure the audience did too. So, but that's all the time that we have today. So please don't forget to watch Café con Felo, which airs Monday through Thursdays at 7 p.m. right here on CUNY TV. Saludos.